Now, I've switched to the desktop version of OneNote, which, as I mentioned before, has some additional functionality that you can't get either in the web version or within the version that runs within Microsoft Teams. Although you can do most of what I will do today, just a few little bits that you can't do within Microsoft Teams. So the first thing to look at and to remind ourselves is that we have a set of pre-populated folders which we set up initially, and what I've done is gone ahead and renamed these folders to names which are more suitable to me, and you do that just by right clicking on the folder name and select rename. The underscores before the names of Supervisor, Library and Collaborate that I've put here are to ensure that these three appear at the top of the list. Otherwise, the list of folders listed here will automatically order alphabetically. So Christiane Adekunle's folder would be first, the Collaborate folder would be next, then Quiva Flynn's folder, and so on. So just to keep things neater, it's handier just to put the little underscore before your general folders, and that keeps the general folders toward the top of your list, and then the student folders will remain alphabetized underneath them. I've also tidied these up, so I've removed the subfolder from Collaborate, I've removed the subfolder from Library, and I've left in place, just for reasons we'll see in a second, the subfolder using the teacher only space, but I've changed the name of the teacher to Supervisor. I should point out, for those of you who are going to use postgrads or postdocs to help supervise, it may be of interest to you that if you go to the Class Notebook tab, you can add and remove teachers/lecturers. So you can add additional people who will have rights to view the content of each of the student folders, and also to post material and edit material that's been made present on the site. Now, the next thing we should look at really is the structure as it appears for students. So each student, when they log in, is going to have, in addition to the Collaborate folder and the Library folder, which is available to them, the Supervisor folder is invisible to them. In addition to that, each of them will have within their own area a folder which we specified earlier as Writing, Protocols and Lab Daybook. So maybe starting with just Lab Daybook, what we see is that the Lab Daybook is just a folder and it's completely empty. There's no structure to it. It has nothing added. And perhaps that is the way in which you want to distribute your Lab Daybook, but perhaps not. Perhaps you would prefer to give some sort of more structured format to the Lab Daybook, and here's one way in which you might do this. Now, in order to do this, the first thing you're going to have to do is delete the Lab Daybook from each of the students' folders, as we can see here. There's no easy way to do this simultaneously from all the students, but it's easy enough to just right-click on Lab Daybook and delete that section from student 1, and then same thing, delete that section from student number 2, and then delete that section from student number 3. Now, why would we want to do that? For the following reason. We can give a more structured Lab Daybook, which we can distribute to the students, and we'll do that in the following way. The first thing we'll do is we'll go to the Supervisor tab, which we see here. We'll right-click on it, and we will put in a new section. And we're going to call that section Lab Daybook. And that's that. So now we have a section in our private teacher space called Lab Daybook, and we can see that that is pre-populated with one page called Untitled Page. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give this page a title, and I'm going to call the page Experiment. And I'm going to follow that with the octothorpe, so the sign that's used as a symbol for number. So this is experiment number. So now what I'm suggesting, I suppose by naming it this way, is that each page in the daybook should have an experiment associated with it, which you can then number. But there's some other things that I might want to do as well. So I think maybe the first thing I'd like to do is ensure that every page has some standardized information at the top of it. And I'm going to do this by inserting a pretty small table here. And within that table, I'm going to have the following headings. I'm going to have the date. I'm going to have an experiment title. I'm going to have a section, a link to the protocol or protocols which have been used in order to complete the experiment. And then a very useful thing to have at the top of pages, of course, is a summary which can be written after the experiment is completed. So these are the things I'm going to add in. I'm going to select all of these and I'm just going to make them bold to make them look a bit better. I'm going to expand the area in which I can write out to about here. And then I'm also going to expand this table a little bit so that it extends out to about the same width. And now what I have is a table that the student can fill in with the date, the experimental title, the protocol used, and a summary. If you want to, you can put some placeholder text like type experiment title here, but this of course isn't necessary. Now here's the interesting thing that we can do here. If I go to this page called experiment number, this one page here, and if I right click on it, I can choose from the menu here, set as default template, which is what I'm going to do. Now, it may be that there's a slightly different command if you're working in Windows, but if you Google it, you should be able to find this out, how to do this pretty quickly. So I'm going to set this as the default template. And now, every time that I add a page, you can't see it on the screen, but I'm going to the bottom of the page and I'm clicking on the Add Page tab. Now, every time I add a page, the new page which I add is going to have this formalized table to be filled out at the top of each page. And we know that these are different pages because you can see that this page was generated at 1758 today, and this page was generated at 1801, a few minutes later. Now, what's the next thing that we need to do? Well, the next thing we need to do is ensure that we give this structured page to each of the students as part of their lab daybook folder. So what I'm going to do is remove the additional page that we don't need. I'm going to go to lab daybook. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to distribute this lab daybook with the standardized template page which I've just made. I'm going to distribute it to each of the students. So I go to lab daybook and I'm going to right click on it and I'm going to choose copy section 2. And now it gives me some options as to where I want to copy it to. So I'm going to copy it to student 1 and just click copy. And then I'm going to repeat that, right click and copy section 2. And I'm going to go to student 2. And then for the third student, I'm going to go right click and copy section 2 and choose the third student and copy. And now if I go to that lab daybook folder in any one of the students, so let's pick this student here. So I go to that folder, what I find is I have lab daybook is there. I've got the template page, which is available right here. And once again, if I go to the bottom of the page, which you can't see here, and if I click on add page, a new page will appear and I have the same experimental setup for a lab daybook page that I wanted. Now, it's important that you recognize that, of course, the three students could be doing entirely different projects, and if they were, it may be that the standardized structure of your template page for the lab daybook would be different for one student versus another. And this method here allows you to set up multiple instances of the lab daybook as sections and then to copy those sections to one or more of the students as appropriate.